Hi everyone, in this video I wanted to spend some time talking about the changes to Dark Knight that were previewed in the Endwalker live letter just this past Friday. So I'm going to be talking about 10 things that I saw and 10 things they told us, as well as some speculation based on those things. So starting off with kind of a general overview of how they're approaching job design. They had mentioned that they will be moving more towards keeping classes and primary jobs around the Shadowbringers 5x balance, if you will, and 5x direction, as opposed to the 3x, which is Heaven's Ward. So overall, I think this is a good thing. Tank balance is in a really good place. Dark Knight's in a good place. All the tanks are in a really good place. And so while Heaven's Ward 3x was fun, if you played during that time, you also know it was very tedious in terms of rotations. Things weren't as balanced between the different jobs as they are today. So overall, I think this is a good thing. So just to kind of get that out of the way. Number two, and one that I think is going to be really, really impactful as we talk more, is the change to different abilities to align them to 60 and 120 second cooldown windows. So for Dark Knight, what that means, at least that we know of, that's been confirmed, is that Delerium, which is currently a 90 second cooldown, will be moved to a 60 second cooldown. So right now, with Dark Knight, you have Blood Weapon on 60, Delirium on 90, and Living Shadow on 120. So Delirium will now be a 60 second cooldown. So I think this is good for everyone, quite frankly. So for serious players who are trying to optimize their damage and optimize their burst windows, this will make it easier to align those burst windows, as they mentioned. For players who don't really care about this, though, I also think this is good, and you should also be very excited about this, because essentially what this means is you get more active gameplay. So one of the, I would say, boring things about Dark Knight is that when you're not doing Blood Weapon, when you're not doing Delirium and Shadow, that in-between time can feel very slow, and you're just kind of hitting 1, 2, 3, and it gets very boring. So moving Delirium to every 60 seconds just means you get to push your button and see the nice damage numbers more, which is nice because that means more engaging gameplay, which I think is overall a good thing, regardless of whether you want to optimize your damage or not. So the third thing I want to touch on is another general thing specific to the tanks, which they had mentioned around using defensives at optimal times will grant greater benefits. Now, they use the phrase optimal times and greater benefits. It's kind of unknown what that means. I couldn't remember, I rewatched the VOD to figure out, like, do these benefits, are they to yourself or are they to the party, to both? Maybe one, maybe not the other. I don't know. That's something I think we're going to have to wait and see. So my overall impression of this is it's a good thing, because I think rotational optimization makes more engaging gameplay. So if you push your buttons correctly and you get different abilities or different benefits in a more beneficial way, that can be fun and engaging to a certain degree. However, this could potentially be bad if overpowered, or potentially too different between the different tanks. So normally, this is going to be a really delicate balance that they have to move, like figure out how to handle, because homogenization across the tanks in this aspect could be bad, and it could also be good. If the benefits are too standardized, then it's boring and not all that interesting. If it's too good or too different, it could potentially be overpowered. So what do I mean by this? So say, for example, we're talking about party buffs, and it's something like, oh, well, if you use this buff at the right time, everyone gets a 2% damage increase. I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would even do a 1% damage increase, because any damage increase would just be way too overpowered in my opinion. I think all the benefits are going to be defensive. But let's say they did something where it was you get a 1% or 2% damage increase on Warrior for popping the ability the right way, and on Paladin you got a 1 or 2% healing bonus benefit. That it just feels really, really slippery slope in terms of messing with tank balance. And I realize for the majority of players that wouldn't be a problem, but for any group who cares about optimizing their like group composition, it's going to be a slippery slope where certain tanks are going to potentially be prioritized over another. So I spent way too long talking about this. We're just going to have to wait and see what this actually turns out to be. Could be good, could be bad. Fourth thing, range attacks don't break combos. I don't think this is a big deal. No one really cares about this. This just raises the skill floor. In almost any situation, using a range attack is a bad thing. I can't even think of one fight where it's important. So that's like all of the high level tank specific or overall job specific changes coming. Let's talk about some of the Dark Knight specific changes that are coming with Endwalker. So to start with, Salted Earth is now an area around you. I think this is let me rephrase that. I think this could be a good thing. Could be a good thing. Salted Earth is really boring today. Its damage is low, its cooldown is high, 90 seconds. It's just really kind of a useless ability for the most part. You just click it because if you don't click it, you're just losing potency for no reason. One thing to note here is that this is a 90-second cooldown, so maybe with the Salted Earth change, they're changing it to a 60-second cooldown. They didn't specifically mention that, but it's one thing that I was thinking about. Because, yeah, right now, Salted Earth is, 90 seconds. So we'll have to see what happens there. They also mentioned that there will be, and we saw it in the job actions trailer, a new ability which triggers off of this. Again, this could be good or bad. It depends on what the ability is, what it does. If it's just a random AoE damage ability, I think this entire change to Salted Earth could potentially be a complete wash, if I'm being honest. Moving out of AoEs is really annoying. Like it could be really annoying if enemies move out of AoEs, like if you have to reposition a boss. So this could all be annoying that way. And even if the extra proc ability, the extra ability that we're getting, again that we saw, the one with like the bubbles, is an AoE that's just more damage. Again, I think it's mostly useless. AoEs are mostly useless as a whole. So otherwise, like I think this could potentially just be button bloat damage, like damaging button bloat. But again, we'll have to wait and see. The number 6 thing, Shadow learns new abilities that you get. Okay, I don't know why they needed to tell us that, but that's cool. Number 7, they're changing Plunge to have a range of 20 yalms. Right now it's 15 yalms. So this change basically brings it in line with Warrior. This is just a small quality of life enhancement. I think this type of homogenization is fine. I assume they're not going to change the animation, so Warrior charge is still going to be faster. Whatever, I don't really care about this. My hope is that they take the potency off, but I am not holding my breath there. Alright, the two potential biggest changes that I want to talk about, which could have some serious impact. So the first being that there's going to be a new defensive separate from TBN, which is a single target buff. So we saw this in the job actions trailer. It was like this circle thing that went around the party member. I have a lot of questions here. Like, what kind of defensive ability is it? Is it an absorb shield, damage reduction? Does it cost mana? All of this stuff. So without knowing this, I think it's really hard to make informed judgments here. I really hope it doesn't cost mana. That's going to be my big thing, because assuming that TBN still costs mana, then you're going to have to be balancing between this defensive TBN and, you know, Edge of Shadow and Flood of Shadow, which is going to be really annoying. So I hope it doesn't cost mana. The other thing, and I want to preface this by saying this is purely speculation, they did not confirm this to my knowledge, is mentioning that this is a new defensive separate from TBN potentially leads me to believe that maybe TBN is changing to no longer be targetable on a party member. Now, why do I think that that may be the case? Again, this is purely speculation, but imagine having TBN plus this new defensive that you can put on a party member. That feels like a lot of extra targetable defensive, and quite honestly, it seems especially overkill, because almost no other party member besides the other tank would even need like a defensive like that anyway. And tanks already have a million defensive cooldowns to handle all the damage that's incoming. I mean, you got your class 1, so Dark Knight's Dark Mind, you got Rampart, you got Shadow Wall, you got your Invuln, you got Missionary, you got Reprisal. I mean, you got like a billion buttons here, right? And TBN itself, right? So we have a billion buttons. Dark Knights do. Every job has a billion. Every tank job has a billion buttons. So why would I need TBN plus new defensive? Even my off tank, like, it just feels like overkill. So that's just my speculation that maybe TBN is no longer going to be targetable on a party, and if you want to put a defensive on a party, it's going to be this other button. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I have mixed feelings about that, because say they take TBN off of targeting and it becomes this new ability, then it's like, okay, so why even make the new ability in the first place? Like, I have no idea. And if you have both that can be targeted, again, it just feels like a lot for no reason whatsoever. Because if TBN can still remain targeting on an ally, why would I put this new defensive as opposed to TBN on like even on my co-tank? So we're just gonna have to wait and see. They didn't mention any changes to TBN, but perhaps some changes will come. Again, I just speculated that maybe TBN is no longer targetable. My dream would be that TBN no longer costs mana, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. All right, the last change, which is most important, is Delerium is being changed to 60 seconds to align with the buff alignment, which basically means you're going to get 3 Bloodspillers per Delerium as opposed to 5 per Delerium. So today it's a 10-second buff, means you get 5. I assume it's going to be like a 7 or 8 second, whatever the math turns out to be, which means you get 3. They said you're getting 3, so whatever the number of seconds is. So I already talked about why this is a good thing. Let's talk about a little bit more concretely what that means for Dark Knight and its rotation. So first of all, I think the biggest thing to start off with is this could potentially be a potency decrease, a damage decrease. And what do I mean by this? So today on 90 seconds, you essentially get 5 Bloodspillers for a single target. In a 3-minute window today, you get 2 Deliriums, meaning 10 Bloodspillers. In Endwalker, you're going to get 3 on 30 seconds, and so that means every 3 minutes you're going to get 9 Bloodspillers every 3 minutes, as opposed to 10 every 3 minutes like you get today. And so this, assuming that they keep the potencies between the Bloodspillers relatively even, means you're getting 1 less Bloodspiller every 3 minutes. Which is a potency decrease. So I'm going to speculate here, and this is going to make me think that potentially the new ability that we're getting for Dark Knight could potentially proc off of Delerium. So this is purely an assumption based on what I saw for Warrior and what they were saying for Warrior. So in the Job Actions trailer, Warrior did Inner Release, he did 3 Fell Cleaves, and then he did like this, like a spinning move with his axe where he slammed it down. It was actually sort of like Bloodspiller, but for Warrior. And so assuming that that's a like some type of proc off of Inner Release, I'm going to make an assumption that there's going to be something similar for Dark Knight. And so what that would mean is every Delerium window, you get 3 Bloodspillers plus whatever this new ability is. In the Job Actions trailer, it was really hard to see, but it looked like an ability that it sort of looked like Flood of Shadow, but it was not Flood of Shadow. And maybe they're bringing back Dark Passenger, for those of you who remember that ability. I don't know. We'll have to see. However, I assume the new ability is basically what's going to kind of potentially balance out that damage difference. Again, assuming that the damage difference is even a problem. Like, I assume it will be, just because, I mean, people don't like losing a Bloodspiller. You're essentially having 9 instead of 10, which, if you care about that sort of stuff, you care. The big thing, though, that I think with this Delerium change is your minute cooldown windows are going to get very, very, very busy. So already today on a minute, you have Blood Weapon, you have Carve and Spit, and you have Abyssal Drain. And they're going to change Delerium to put it on a minute, and potentially change Salted Earth to put that on a minute. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 4 that we know of, potentially 5 if they make Salted Earth a minute cooldown as well. That's a lot of buttons to push at the same time, or that come up around the same time. I think for Abyssal Drain and Carve and Spit, it's not a big problem. Even Salted Earth probably won't be a problem if they change it. The big thing would be Delerium and Blood Weapon sharing the same 60-second. Having them both up at the same time today is kind of annoying, because essentially you have to kind of gauge, like, should I use Delerium for the potency now, or you essentially don't want to push Blood Weapon on your Delerium window, because you're going to be limiting your blood gauge generation, because you're not going to do a Soul Eater, right? So usually if you overlap them, you want to make sure you get at least 1 Soul Eater into your Blood Weapon today. And so I think having these both on the same 60 seconds could be bad. I want to reserve judgment that maybe it's not going to be bad, like maybe everything will be fine. But that's probably the one and biggest concern that I have with the Delerium change to 60 seconds is the potential overlap concern and what that means for Blood Weapon. So I think that's everything that they talked about and all those changes. The last thing I want to mention, number 10, is the things that they did not talk about specific to Dark Knight. So the first is Abyssal Drain. This ability is completely worthless, and they did not mention it. I don't know if it sounds like they're not going to change it. They're in the if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's just kind of like an ability that's there today, outside of that random one dungeon where your healer is asleep and you get it at the right time. Abyssal Drain could potentially be nice for a heal, but I don't know. It feels real bad, basically, and it doesn't sound like that's changing, which is sad. The other thing that they didn't talk about, and I'm going to make the assumption it's not changing because they did not talk about it, is Living Dead. I don't hate this ability, and I don't love this ability either. I think for myself, because I mostly play in a static, I think this is mostly not a problem. Living Dead is nice because it has benefits. The cooldown is lower than Hallowed Ground. You can just pop it and forget about it because of how the Living Dead duration and the Walking Dead duration works. So you don't have to be as precise in where you weave it into your rotation, which for doing damage is really helpful. For those of you who who have played Gunbreaker, for example, and tried to weave defensives into their DPS rotation, it's really annoying. So in that respect, living is nice, but I still think for like party finders and group composition reasons, Living Dead has its issues. Party finders, when you're not on voice comms, can be really annoying to call, like, okay, I popped it, please heal me. And then obviously if you don't have a white mage and you don't have benediction, that could also be an issue. This may, like, the only thing I'll say is that maybe they may address Living Dead in another capacity. Like perhaps with the Astrologian changes to make them a pure healer, maybe they'll rework some of their buttons and give them like basically a Benny button where you have both the white mage and the Astrologian both have a one button insta heal. That could be an interesting way to deal with the Living Dead problem without actually changing Living Dead. Again, we don't know any of that, but that's just something that they did not mention and is kind of just pure speculation. All right, well, that's it. I think those are 10 things, kind of 10 observations around Dark Knight. Hopefully you found this video informative and helpful. I'm going to be making more, mostly tank content for Endwalker, so feel free to toss this channel a subscribe. Thanks for watching.